Welcome back. The assassination of Benzair Bhutto as he travelled from an election rally in Rawalpindi shocked the world on December the 27th. Benazir had returned from 8 years of exile to Pakistan only a month earlier and was due to compete for a historic third term as the country's leader in the scheduled January polls. With the election now postponed until February, I'm joined by her husband, Asif Ali Zadari, who's joining us now to discuss the present, the past, and the future. Asif, first of all, it's 2 weeks since that terrible day, 2 weeks and 1 day. They say that time is a great healer, but it presumably doesn't get any easier.
No, David, it doesn't get any easier or any difficulter. It's very difficult. It's impossible for us to get over this loss because the memory is all around us. She was such a personality. She was such a being that she touched thousands and millions of people, and I have people around here who are 80 years old to 10 years old crying their hearts out. There's nothing else, no other feeling but grief and grief around me.
And also, I mean, the family, I mean, you're having to keep the spirits of the family somehow up as well. I mean, the husband is one thing, and then your children is another.
I have to keep the children's spirits, I have to keep the nation's spirit, I have to keep the party's spirit, and then I have to keep my own spirit.
And where were you on that day, on the 27th of December? Where did you hear the terrible news? Were you nearby?
I was in Dubai, David. I was with my children in Dubai. She left me in Dubai with the children, and she always maintained that one parent should be with the children. So I was with the children. I was sitting with my son watching, in fact, historically, Hamid Karzai and herself on the television. And something happened to my heart, and then the phone rang. And it said it was the jeep in which she was, and the telephone call was that something has happened to her. They wouldn't say what. And we ran down to the other television room, by the other television, which had local channels. And we started watching that. The children started watching, and everybody was in disbelief. Everybody was stunned. And I called up friends and people I knew to get hold of a plane to get to Islamabad, and then the television broke the news that God has taken her away from us.
Oh, what a moment. And looking back, do you have any idea what happened? I mean, do you have any idea who did it?
David, she had pointed out to her to this kind of incident in her lifetime. She'd written letters all around the world. She left a letter with Mark Siegel in America. She'd written to the present government. She'd written to all sorts of people all around the world. In every speech, she used to say that I'm going back for democracy, but my life is in danger. The world listened to her, but didn't hear her. If they heard her, they didn't believe that it could happen. Nobody, I think, was mentally prepared for this tragedy.
Yes, and did you ever try and dissuade her from going back, Asif?
David, you knew her very well. She's not a personality which could be dissuaded. I tried. I did tell her after the first attack on her, I said, "Baby, let's us keep you in Bilawal House. I will go do the rallying, and you can talk via satellite television and address the crowds." She said, "If the people will put their lives in danger to come there, then how will my life be safe in Bilawal House? So I will go to my people, and God willing, we will survive, and we will fight against this terrorism and people who are trying to break Pakistan." It was her wish. You could not tell Benazir to do what nobody could tell her what to do. She would do everything according to her leaders, Ruth Lea Bhutto's daughter, according to her leadership capacity and according to her own spirit. She was a highly spirited individual.
Obviously, lots of people in the forthcoming election will be voting partially because of the tragic news and missing Benzair Bhutto. That will be a great factor. But do you expect the elections to go ahead? And do you expect, in the aftermath of this terrible event, do you expect to win them?
I expect the spirit of Benzair Bhutto to win the elections. I expect the people of Pakistan to come out and vote for her. I expect the women of Pakistan to come out and expect them to vote for her. We will win the elections in her name, and we will keep democracy alive in Pakistan in her memory, in her spirit and her memory, and the life that she gave for democracy. The government of today is trying to run away from the elections. We are forcing them, trying to make sure that they cannot run away from these elections. We've been expecting them to create lawlessness, which is already happening. We expect that there will be more trouble before the elections, and in one excuse or the other, they will try and run away from this election. But we reach out to the world and the powers of all international powers, and I request them. I request the government of Britain, I request the government of the United States and the world and the EU to please put their force behind us. We want democracy. Pakistan is dying. This nation will die. There will be a balkanization of Pakistan if we cannot turn towards democracy and turn this grief into democratic power. The people are angry. The workers are angry. The mood is very hostile on the ground. I want to convert all this sorrow into an election victory where we can start building democracy again, start building Pakistan again.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and our thoughts are with you and your grief, of course, and we hope that there's a more peaceful future ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. God bless you.
The turbulence in Pakistan has also contributed to the continuing upward trend of oil prices. On January the 2nd, the price of a barrel of oil surpassed the $100 mark. Only a couple of years ago, people were concerned when black gold topped $40 a barrel. Well, I'm joined now by economist Ruth Lea to discuss the implications of reaching this magic, or not so magic, threshold. Does it matter? And to whom? Well, now, at this moment, as we speak, to our friends around the world, they're telling us that the price of oil is set $94, right?
That's right, yes. I think it was at the beginning of the month that the oil price particularly spiked up because of the problems of Pakistan, because there were problems in Nigeria as well. There were threats to the oil workers. And of course, we had yet more cold weather in the United States, which always seemed to spike the markets. But I think what is happening in the oil markets is a very tight situation, very little spare capacity, an enormous demand still pushing on from China and India. When you've got a situation of soaring demand and tight capacity, what do you get? You get high oil prices. And I think they'll persist this year. I think the era of cheap oil prices is frankly over.
Well, now, let's take the figure of $100 for a moment. Tell me, who is making that money?
Well, in geo-economic terms, of course, it is overwhelmingly the oil producers themselves, the net exporters. And you're talking about Middle East, of course, Saudi Arabia is still the biggest producer, United Arab Emirates, the Iraq, although, of course, the Iraqi situation, they're still producing less oil than they did before the First Gulf War. Iran, although again they're producing under capacity as well. The other OPEC countries like Venezuela, another of our favourite countries, Ecuador, Algeria, Libya, all these countries are doing extremely well. And of course Russia. I mean, these are the countries that really benefit when you have very expensive oil.
Why do we let them get away with this then?
Well, it is supply and demand. While there is a relatively scarce spare capacity, and you have this huge demand coming through from China and India, and I think this is really what has changed the situation. You know, 5-10 years ago, I don't think we would have been talking about China and India as we are today. But while you have this huge demand and this tight supply side, inevitably the markets just price up the price of oil.
What about the oil companies? Are they making a fortune out of this, or is it just the oil producers?
I think they're doing pretty well. I think if you look at the stock exchange, you'll see that if you had shares in Shell or BP, they're doing pretty well. And I think that tells you something about their profitability.
All right. So now, is this the top mark, this $100, or could it be doubled to $200 in another year's time?
It depends hugely what happens, of course, to demand and supply. But assuming that demand will just continue this year, and because of China, it will do. I mean, if the US goes into recession, perhaps there'll be some modification of demand. But on the supply side, of course, if there's a major disruption to supply, possibly because the US attacks Iran, and that's always a possibility, then who knows where the oil price would go. And the Middle East is still absolutely crucial to the oil price.
One of the other negative words we are hearing at the moment, we hear it a lot in fact, is inflation. Now, what do you see as the prospects there?
I don't think it's very clever, and I think the higher oil prices clearly contribute to that. There are concerns in the States, there are concerns in Europe, and there are concerns in China. And it will be very much how the particular monetary authorities react to that, depending on, of course, what will happen to the world economy. But it's interesting, it won't be so bad as it was way back in the 70s, which I'm sure we remember only too badly, when there was the oil embargoes and a sudden abrupt cut in supply, and that really did lead to stagflation in the Western world. This time it won't be like that.
And you're saying that inflation is not going to be as bad as it was in the bad old days and so on, but what effect will it have on people's lives?
Well, inevitably, if you're in a Western economy or in China or in Japan, you will see your fuel bills going up and your petrol bills, your utility bills going up. And in fact, that's already being experienced. And indeed, if you have a central bank that actually decides to hold interest rates up in order to control inflation, you'll see a much slower growing economy. So with oil prices this high, it's inevitably going to have a deleterious effect on the living standards of people who live in oil-consuming countries.
And do you fear a recession or not?
Well, in the States, I think there are all sorts of other factors that are running through now that I was very interested to hear Bernanke this week, the Fed head, talking about the possibilities of recession in the States and how things had worsened even since 2 or 3 months ago. And so I think we're all being almost prepared now for a recession in the States. The rest of the world economy, slow down in Europe, slow down in the UK, but come on, let's be honest, China and India are just going to power ahead.
Ruth, thank you very much indeed. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much.